Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, the Justice Department releases the transcript of an interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. The longtime Jeffrey Epstein associate answered questions about rumors surrounding the late sex offender, including his relationship with President Trump. President Trump announces D.C. as the host for a major event and unveiling a sweeping beautification plan ahead of America's 250th birthday. Mario Otsu at the White House. The Kremlin says no meeting is planned between the presidents of Russia and Ukraine. Arian Pozdar has how President Trump is responding amid ongoing peace efforts by the U.S. An agency supported by the United Nations declares a famine in the Gaza Strip, but Israel calls the group's report an outright lie. Jason Perry brings us the details. And an olive branch to the U.S., Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announces that he's removing retaliatory tariffs on many American goods covered under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. The move comes after a call between Carney and Trump.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The Justice Department has released the transcript of an interview with Jeffrey Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, conducted by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. According to the transcript, Maxwell denied there was a client list or that she ever saw Epstein blackmail anyone. Maxwell said she never witnessed anything untoward in President Trump's friendship with Epstein and that she never heard of any allegations that Trump acted inappropriately. She also said she never saw Trump at Epstein's house and saw them being friendly only in social settings. According to the transcript, the DOJ gave Maxwell limited immunity so that she could discuss her criminal case, but did not promise any other benefits in exchange for her testimony. Prior to the transcript's release, President Trump told reporters he supported transparency in the case. Maxwell, a British former socialite, was Jeffrey Epstein's longtime confidant. She was convicted of aiding him in sexually abusing and trafficking underage girls. And President Trump makes a big announcement for D.C. ahead of America's 250th anniversary, plus the details on new funding plans for renovations as the White House touts progress in its ongoing crackdown on crime. NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Otsu has more from the White House.
We're spending a lot of money wisely on making it really beautiful. It's going to be beautiful again.
President Trump announcing today that he'll be renovating the Kennedy Center, which will host the 2026 World Cup draw on December 5th.
In Washington, D.C., we have the lowest crime numbers they've had in years. 0 murders in the last week since we've done this. That's the first time in memory that that's happened.
President Trump is declaring these beautification efforts in the same breath as the crackdown on D.C. crime, saying he's making the capital cleaner and safer to prepare for America's 250th birthday next year.
As a nation, we should be preparing for a most spectacular birthday party.
Last night, in an outing with police and National Guard troops, the president announced he'll be renovating D.C. parks and green spaces.
Look, we're going to have all brand new, beautiful grass. You know, we have a life and grass has a life. And the grass here died about 40 years ago.
Highlighting he's good with grass because of his golf courses.
I know more about grass than any human being, I think, anywhere in the world.
President Trump says he will be raising funds from Congress for this revamping.
We're going to be raising about $2 billion from Congress. We're going to head out right from the Capitol and the White House, and if you look at a circle and go about 3 miles out, it's going to be beautiful.
Adding that he has already spoken to Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune about getting the money to beautify the city, and he predicts it will even be bipartisan.
They're ready. Everybody wants to save D.C. In one way, it's the easiest. The violence was more than any other city in the country.
This as the White House is announcing today that there have been 719 arrests and 91 illegal guns seized since the crackdown began in D.C. on August 7th.
They needed help. They don't like to say it. I wish they'd say, I need help. I wish the mayor of D.C. would say, you know, we're overridden with crime and we need help, instead of saying the stats are down. I mean, they're under investigation now for fake numbers.
And Press Secretary Leavitt yesterday highlighting an op-ed written by NTD's White House reporter Iris Tao about her story of being robbed at gunpoint. Leavitt thanks Tao for sharing her story, saying that every White House reporter knows that Washington, D.C. has a serious crime problem, but that few will admit it. Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
National Guard troops deployed in Washington, D.C. now have authorization to carry weapons. And President Trump says he plans to beautify the area surrounding the White House and Capitol building. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
The nearly 2,000 National Guard troops deployed in the nation's capital have been authorized to carry weapons. The move was confirmed by the Pentagon on Friday, and the National Guard troops on the ground here in Washington, D.C. could start carrying their guns within the coming days. However, they will not be allowed to make arrests. A U.S. official told Fox News at the direction of the Secretary of Defense, JTF D.C. members supporting the mission to lower the crime rate in our nation's capital will soon be on a mission with their service-issued weapons, consistent with their mission and training. President Trump says he's contemplating how long the additional law enforcement in Washington will continue.
How long do we stay? Because if we stay, we want to make sure it doesn't come back. So we have to take care of these criminals and get them out of it. We've collected hundreds of career criminals.
Trump also says his administration will be asking Congress for $2 billion to help clean up D.C. He says he plans to use some of it to beautify the areas within a few miles around the White House and the Capitol building.
We're going to head out right from the Capitol and the White House, and if you look at a circle and go about 3 miles out, it's going to be beautiful. We're going to have this place beautified within a period of 12 months.
Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum told Newsmax that the park police in D.C. have been working to clean up the homeless encampments in the federal parks.
The U.S. Park Police has removed all 72 of the homeless encampments that were on U.S. park property in this metro area.
From the Oval Office, President Trump gives his long-term vision for D.C.
This will be one of the safest places anywhere on earth.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Gilmar Abrego Garcia has been released from custody while awaiting trial for human smuggling charges. This is the man who was deported to El Salvador, then brought back to the U.S. We'll hear reaction from Florida Republican Congressman Randy Fine tonight on Capitol Report at 7 p.m. Eastern. The U.S. Space Force launched a new mission involving its secret space drone this week. It's part of the U.S. military's efforts to remain the dominant force in every theater of war. Our Washington correspondent Luis Adoro Martinez has more on this story.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, engines full power, and liftoff. Go, Spaceland, go, USS 36.
The U.S. Space Force launched its secret space drone, the X-37B, aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket earlier this week. Its mission will help improve the U.S. military's laser communication systems and test its quantum inertial navigation systems, which would allow the U.S. military to avoid reliance on GPS. The U.S. is preparing for future and modern warfare, which heavily relies on drone technology in unconventional theaters, in this case, space.
Nobody expected flimsy Japanese fighters to sink America's battleships at Pearl Harbor. Nobody expected 19 hijackers with box cutters to turn passenger jets into missiles on 9/11. And today, I fear we're making the same mistake with drones. Nobody's expecting them to cause catastrophic damage. But sadly, it's only a matter of time.
U.S. adversaries like China can produce up to 700,000 FPV drones monthly, while the U.S. can only produce several thousands. That's why the Trump administration has instructed the Pentagon to boost the production of U.S.-made drones. Congress has also allocated over $33 billion in the One Big Beautiful bill to drone production in the United States, a number that could increase to over $50 billion through the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2026.
So while our adversaries have produced millions of cheap drones, before us, we were mired in bureaucratic red tape. Not anymore. In June, President Trump issued an executive order unleashing American drone dominance to bolster our drone industry and arm our warfighters.
The Trump administration is also considering a $50 billion deal to purchase over 50 million battle-tested Ukrainian military drones for the U.S. military. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump continues working on a possible Russia-Ukraine meeting. He also describes the difficulties associated with that task. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pozdar has the latest on the peace efforts.
Vladimir Putin, who I believe will be coming, depending on what happens. He may be coming.
President Trump on Friday saying he continues working on talks between Russia and Ukraine. Early on Friday, Trump pointed at the difficulty of setting up such a meeting.
Well, we'll see. We're going to see if Putin and Zelenskyy will be working together. You know, that's like oil and vinegar, a little bit. They don't get along too well.
Throughout the week, global leaders talked about a possible trilateral meeting, but plans might be changing.
We'll see, and then we'll see whether or not I would have to be there. I'd rather not. I'd rather have them have a meeting and see how they can do. But in the meantime, they continue to fight and they continue to kill people.
Meanwhile, Moscow reiterates that a meeting only makes sense once the presidents agree on the details of a possible peace deal. Russia's foreign minister tells NBC that Moscow doesn't favor direct talks at this stage.
Putin is ready to meet with Zelenskyy when the agenda would be ready for a summit. And this agenda is not ready at all.
But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy doesn't agree. He says Russia is just trying to buy time.
The Russians are trying to do anything to avoid the meeting. The issue is not the meeting itself. The issue is that they do not want to end the war.
Russia's foreign minister also pointed to the fact that Zelenskyy has not been re-elected yet. His term has been extended due to the ongoing war and martial law. Ukraine rejects this claim, citing the country's constitution, which says Zelenskyy should remain in office while the war continues. Arian Pozdar, NTD News.
An agency supported by the United Nations has declared a famine in the Gaza Strip, but Israel's prime minister says the group's report is, quote, an outright lie. NTD's Jason Perry brings us the latest.
Israel says that over 300 trucks carrying humanitarian aid are entering the Gaza Strip every day. And the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says it's been regularly delivering over 1 million meals per day to residents. Israel also says that community kitchens in the Gaza Strip provide over 400,000 hot meals to people every day. But the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, which is backed by the United Nations, says almost 25% of the Gaza population is experiencing famine. On Thursday, a director in the United Nations World Food Program said this.
Since the IPC itself was created more than 20 years ago, this is only the 5th time that there's been a famine confirmation. There was a 2011 in Somalia, 2017 in South Sudan, 2020 for South Sudan again, and then in 2024 for Sudan. So this is an historic moment.
However, Israel's foreign ministry in a post on X says that the IPC's normal standard for famine has been when 30% of the population experiences malnutrition. Israel accuses the group of lowering the standard to 15% in order to declare a famine in Gaza. We recently reached out to the IPC for comment on their alleged change in famine criteria for Gaza, but they asked us not to attribute their response. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the IPC's report a, quote, outright lie, adding that the only ones being intentionally starved in Gaza are the hostages. President Trump on Friday commented on the hostage situation.
The situation has to end. It's extortion and it has to end. And we'll see what happens. I actually think they're safer in many ways if you went in and you really went in fast and you did it.
On the same day, sirens sounded in Tel Aviv after the Iran-backed Houthi terrorist group in Yemen fired a missile at Israel. Israel made several attempts to intercept it and said the missile likely fragmented in the air. And the only injuries reported happened while people were trying to take cover. And across Israel's northern border, the Lebanese government says they have officially begun disarming non-state actors. They reported that Hamas and other Palestinian groups east of Beirut handed over their weapons to the Lebanese army. The event is expected to be a precursor to disarming the Hezbollah terrorist group, which has threatened civil war with Lebanon if the country tries to disarm the group. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Former National Security Advisor John Bolton has returned to his Maryland home after the FBI conducted a search there and at his Washington office. Bolton served in President Trump's first administration as National Security Advisor. He later became critical of the president. The investigation is over potential mishandling of classified information. Vice President J.D. Vance says the probe is still in early stages and may find no crime. He adds that Bolton is not being targeted for political reasons, but for broad concerns. After serving in the Trump administration during his first term, Bolton wrote a book in 2020 criticizing the president. The DOJ at the time began investigating him for disclosing classified information in the book. That probe was closed during Biden's presidency. When asked, President Trump commented that he didn't know about the raid, but that he has instructed Attorney General Pam Bondi to do what you have to do. Coming up, the Trump administration has just stopped issuing work visas for commercial truck drivers. This follows the story of an illegal immigrant truck driver suspected of making an illegal U-turn that led to a crash, killing 3 in Florida. Jack Bradley reports. After a phone call with President Trump yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada announces that it's removing many retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods that are covered under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell signals a potential interest rate cut. We have highlights from his speech at the Fed's annual event and the market's reaction. That and more after the break here on NTD News. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Interstate 90 in New York is closed due to a deadly rollover bus crash. Police say the driver lost control for an unknown reason and the bus ended up in a ditch. The tour bus was returning to New York City from Niagara Falls. There are reports of multiple injuries and death, including at least 1 child. The tour bus company confirmed there were 52 people on board, including the driver, who survived. Most of the people on board were Indian, Chinese, and Filipino. Translators were called to the scene to assist police. This happened about 25 miles east of Buffalo near Pembroke. A large stretch of the roadway has been shut down in both directions for the investigation. The U.S. has stopped issuing work visas to commercial truck drivers. An illegal immigrant truck driver faces charges for allegedly killing 3 people during an illegal U-turn in Florida. And the State Department has confirmed it's reviewing the eligibility of all current holders of U.S. visas. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
The State Department has stopped issuing visas to commercial truck drivers. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says foreign truck drivers are undercutting American workers and endangering lives. It comes a little over a week after a fatal crash in Florida involving Harjinder Singh, an Indian national who officials say does not speak English and entered the U.S. illegally.
Now, first of all, he wasn't eligible for a commercial driver's license. Second of all, he doesn't speak or understand English. How are you going to operate some big rig when you don't understand the road signs?
He was granted a commercial driver's license in California, and that's where he was arrested after officials say he fled there to avoid arrest. He was sent back to Florida and is awaiting trial. The Department of Homeland Security and many Republican officials are blaming this incident on sanctuary policies, where local authorities do not have to comply with federal immigration enforcement.
Those sanctuary policies in California are spilling over, and they are impacting people around the country.
We know that no state is not a border state.
The suspect obtained a commercial driver's license in California, which is one of 19 states, in addition to the District of Columbia, that issues licenses regardless of immigration status. And the State Department has launched a review of the records of all U.S. visa holders, about 55 million people. They're looking for any signs of an ineligibility, and it's a process that they're calling continuous vetting. This includes visa overstays, criminal activity, or support for terrorism. The department says that since President Trump returned to office, visa revocations have more than doubled, and student visa cancellations are up nearly 4 times. This year, the Trump administration revoked over 6,000 student visas, mostly for breaking the law, some overstays, and up to 300 for supporting terrorism. And those seeking new visas have their social media checked by law enforcement, and anything considered anti-Semitic is grounds for not issuing a visa. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney announced today that the country is dropping retaliatory tariffs to match U.S. tariff exemptions. This is for goods covered under the United States-Mexico-Canada Trade Pact. The move is designed to reset trade talks between the two countries.
Consistent with Canada's commitment to CUSMA, I'm announcing today that the Canadian government will now match the United States by removing all of Canada's tariffs on U.S. goods specifically covered under CUSMA. Canada currently has the best trade deal with the United States. And while it's different from what we had before, it is still better than that of any other country.
The tariff removal kicks in on September 1st. Carney says the U.S. recently confirmed it won't slap tariffs on Canadian goods under the USMCA, which he called a positive step. For now, Canadian tariffs on U.S. autos, steel, and aluminum will stay in place. Canada has been negotiating with the U.S. for months on a new economic and security deal, but they're still far from an agreement. Today's announcement comes after Carney's call with President Trump on Thursday. The markets cheered as Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell hints a long-awaited interest rate cut could be coming, but that may not be all good news for the U.S. economy. Karen Kaifa has the details from the Fed Chief's closely watched speech today.
Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell Friday hinting at a long-awaited interest rate cut, not because of President Donald Trump's pressure on the central bank, but because the U.S. labor market is now on shaky ground.
It is a curious kind of balance that results from a marked slowing in both the supply of and demand for workers. This unusual situation suggests that downside risks to employment are rising. Our policy rate is now 100 basis points closer to neutral than it was a year ago. And the stability of the unemployment rate and other labor market measures allows us to proceed carefully as we consider changes to our policy stance. Nonetheless, with policy in restrictive territory, the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance.
Speaking at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City's annual symposium in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Powell said Trump's tariffs have pushed prices higher, but doesn't yet know whether that will lead to persistent inflation.
The upward pressure on prices from tariffs could spur a more lasting inflation dynamic, and that is a risk to be assessed and managed.
That uncertainty puts the Fed, whose mandate is maximum employment and stable prices, in a tough spot.
If they're more focused on inflation, they're probably going to have a higher for longer, or what we would call a hawkish stance going forward, which is certainly not what Wall Street is hoping for.
Trump has made no secret of his displeasure with the independent Fed or his plans to reshape it. This week, Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte accused Fed Governor Lisa Cook, a Biden appointee, of mortgage fraud, and the Justice Department is now looking. Trump said Friday if Cook doesn't resign, he'll fire her.
What she did was bad. So I'll fire her if she doesn't resign.
Cook says she won't be bullied and will provide facts to answer any questions. In Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa.
The Federal Reserve will announce its next decision on interest rates on September 17th. Coming up, Texas senators continue discussions on a proposed redistricting map that could favor Republicans. Democrats are questioning the map's proponents on one key criterion. It's day 2 of the Menendez brothers' parole hearings. Lyle Menendez will face the California Parole Board a day after his younger brother was denied parole for the murder of their parents. That and more after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Texas senators gathered this afternoon and are expected to approve a map of new congressional districts. The map has drawn the ire of Democrats who say it violates the Voting Rights Act. Ahead of the vote, the chairman of the Texas Senate's redistricting committee pushed back on those claims. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Texas senators met on Friday to discuss redistricting in Texas. The new maps in question could potentially help Republicans win 5 House seats in next year's midterm elections.
Our council have looked over it. Other council has looked over it. It is legal under all applicable law. And again, frankly, there is absolutely no reason to look at racial data when you're trying to improve political performance. The best measure of that is whether people have been voting Republican or Democrat.
Democrats argue that the maps negatively impact minorities such as Hispanic and Black demographics.
You know, I coined the phrase rigged districting throughout this process. This whole process is a sham. This whole process is a farce. And it will forever be called rigged districting.
Throughout the day, State Senator King, a Republican, said race was not a consideration when he looked at the maps. The DOJ under the Trump administration told Texas to redraw lines because it said the state had several so-called coalition districts, which are unconstitutional. The Democratic Party has been fighting the maps in court. If their court challenge fails, Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who represents Texas in the U.S. House, says he won't run for re-election. California Democrats responded to Texas by approving its own redistricting plan on Thursday. That means California voters will choose whether to implement its new maps in a special election on November 4th. Californians previously voted more than a decade ago to allow only an independent commission to draw congressional lines. The White House is expecting other states to follow Texas, such as Ohio, Missouri, Florida, Indiana, and South Carolina, to add more districts that could favor the GOP, while Democrats are looking to blue states like Illinois, Maryland, and New York for the same reason. David Lamb, NTD News.
Just one day after Eric Menendez was denied parole, his older brother, Lyle, is now facing the California Parole Board. Decades after the notorious murders of their parents in Beverly Hills, the board is now reviewing his prison record and past behavior. NTD's Christina Corona has the latest.
Lyle Menendez is currently facing his parole hearing Friday at Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. This comes one day after his younger brother, Eric Menendez, was denied parole following his first hearing in 36 years for the murder of their parents. Eric's almost 10-hour hearing Thursday was held virtually, and the board cited his prison behavior, past burglaries, and the killing of his mother. Commissioner Robert Barton noted Eric's repeated rule violations, including cell phone smuggling, tax fraud, inappropriate behavior with visitors, and misuse of prison computers. Although Eric earned a college degree and is considered a model citizen by his family, Barton said he had not been a model prisoner and continues to pose a risk to public safety. Barton also described the murder of Eric's mother as an execution-style act lacking human compassion. Prosecutors have argued that the brothers killed for financial gain, not self-defense. During the hearing, Eric apologized and thanked his family, over 20 of whom spoke in support of his release. The family released a statement saying, "While we respect the decision, today's outcome was of course disappointing and not what we hoped for." They go on to say his remorse, growth, and the positive impact he had on others speak for themselves. "We will continue to stand by him and hold to the hope he is able to return home soon." Eric Menendez will be eligible for parole again in 3 years. If Lyle Menendez is granted parole, he would not be released immediately. The decision first goes to the board's chief counsel for review, then to Governor Newsom, who has 30 days to approve, deny, or modify it. If parole is denied, attorneys can request a board review for errors, and the full board may weigh in if needed. The brothers also have a pending habeas corpus petition seeking a review of their convictions. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Coming up in tennis, the U.S. Open begins play Sunday with former champion Novak Djokovic looking for another title. Dave Martin has the report when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. It's been nearly 2 years since all-time tennis great Novak Djokovic last won a major, winning the 2023 U.S. Open. This year's event starts Sunday, and Djokovic is one of several favorites vying for the title. Dave Martin has the story.
It was nearly 2 years ago when Novak Djokovic ran roughshod through the U.S. Open, losing just 2 sets en route to his record-extending 24th Grand Slam title. But in the 7 majors since, the now 38-year-old has yet to win another, his longest title drought in more than a dozen years. As the 2025 U.S. Open begins Sunday, Djokovic's biggest obstacle to winning, besides his age, is #1 ranked Jannik Sinner. Perhaps not coincidentally, Sinner's rise to the top has taken place during Djokovic's drought. The 24-year-old has won 4 of the last 7 majors since, while ending Djokovic's run 3 times during the process. And while Sinner opens this year's event as the top seed on the men's side, right behind him will be second-ranked Carlos Alcaraz. Alcaraz, too, has risen during Djokovic's drought, winning the other 3 majors that Sinner didn't. But while Sinner has owned Djokovic recently, beating him 5 straight times, Alcaraz has split their last 2 major meetings. This year, though, he's looking for a better outcome.
New York is a place that I love playing. It is where I got my first Grand Slam, which I just appreciate the love and the support that I received there every year that I go. And last year it was disappointing, the level that I played there. So this year I just really want to show my really good tennis, my best tennis, try to go as far as I can.
Alcaraz, Sinner, and the now somewhat underdog Djokovic begin their U.S. Open play in just 2 days. Meanwhile, on the women's side, 10 of the last 15 majors have been won by either Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, or Aryna Sabalenka, the top 3 seeds at this year's U.S. Open. But they'll share plenty of attention with 7-time major champion Venus Williams, who at 45 will be the oldest singles player at the U.S. Open in more than 40 years when she steps on the court Monday. The former 2-time U.S. Open champion already made headlines earlier this summer when she became the 2nd oldest player ever to win a singles-level tour match, downing 47th-ranked Peyton Stearns in 3 sets at the D.C. Open. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
This month, the Federal Aviation Administration proposed a new rule that would make it easier for companies to use drones beyond line of sight. A government waiver allows companies to do that now, but it's a tedious process. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more on how one company is making deliveries by drone.
Delivery by drone. Walmart and drone company Wing currently provide deliveries in the Dallas area. Wing CEO Adam Woodworth says his fleet of drones is ready to go, but regulations for beyond line of sight drones are still in the works.
Where we keep all the planes we call a nest, and it's basically a fence line with some little pads inside that the planes charge on, and a connection to the internet.
Wing's drones fly up to 65 miles per hour at a height of 150 feet and can travel up to a 12-mile round trip. The remote-controlled aircraft can carry packages up to 5 pounds. One Wing pilot can oversee up to 32 drones at a time.
We've been really focused on, how do we build a great service for sort of that, large suburban sprawl.
Woodworth says his drones are intended to meet a new kind of demand.
If you look at sort of the density of merchants that you would partner with, the need where you have there's still relatively long distances and it's not in the city, but there's still traffic. There's a nice sweet spot there.
Wing isn't the only company looking toward the future. Amazon launched Prime Air drone delivery in suburban Phoenix late last year and plans to expand to Dallas, San Antonio, and Kansas City. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For on-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.